A terrible situation occurred in Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp, down in a huddle screaming this morning in training camp practice. That is a devastating loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Hold on, who that is? Julio Jones got hurt already? This was Tom Brady's worst nightmare. Let's see what this video talk about, man.
A terrible situation occurred in Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp, down in a huddle screaming this morning in training camp practice. That is a devastating loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Hold on, who that is? Julio Jones got hurt already?
Buccaneers absolutely dominated
Mike
headlines
Evans
by
got
making one simple acquisition, signing Julio Jones to a one-year, $6 million contract.
Yeah, they did sign Julio Jones,
that
man.
became a very hot topic as training camp started. We did get an update on Julio Jones, but there were multiple other updates in regards to storylines for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What's going on with Leonard Fournette? How is Julio Jones getting along with Tom Brady? Is this Tom Brady's last season?
Yeah.
And most importantly, something so terrible that happened to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that it could potentially end their season before it even started.
Whoa, what happened?
Exaggerating. This is actually the worst thing that could have happened to them. So before we get to
what happened? Hold on, man. Who got hurt? Leonard Fournette.
Channel grow.
Mike
Most
Evans.
of you guys requested a Tampa Bay
got
Buccaneers
hurt?
training camp update in our last video on Traylon
Hold
Burks.
up,
So
man.
let me know in
Listen,
the
bro.
comment section who we should cover
I'm actually
next.
interested
and of
now.
course, make sure you follow me on Twitter if you want to join.
All right, man. Y'all follow him on Twitter and stuff like that. Do all that good
Out of
stuff.
the way.
Bruh.
What's that?
That was cringy. Yeah, don't ever do that again,
Get all
bro.
that out of
Come
the
on,
way.
bro.
Let's
Man.
start with some good news, man. Julio Jones officially made his debut, his training camp debut for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And for the most part, I have to admit, it kind of is bringing me back to the year that Tom Brady got Randy Moss during the
I
2007
remember that.
season with the New England Patriots. Now, look,
I remember
understand
that.
everyone who is a Tom Brady fan is probably going to be comparing the Julio Jones acquisition to probably the greatest scenario that could happen for Tom Brady. Maybe I'm just likening them to one another because they were one of the most dominant wide receivers over the past decade, while also being perceived as
Even though
past their
Julio
prime
definitely
at
fell
this
off,
stage
but
of their
yeah.
careers. At the same time, Julio Jones is a little bit older than when Randy Moss was when he went to the New England Patriots, but that's besides the point. Julio Jones made his debut for Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers in training camp. He was rocking the number 85 jersey, and for the most part, man, it looked like business as usual for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everything actually seemed to be going well until a very unfortunate injury occurred, which we'll get to in just a second.
Julio Jones got
You guys
hurt?
have been asking me what is going on with Leonard Fournette's weight, because a few days ago we made a video on how Leonard Fournette was 260 pounds. Well, we actually found out during the first few days of training camp that Leonard Fournette came all the way back to 245 pounds.
Okay.
He reported to camp today per source. Veteran running back is back in shape. Crisis is averted. Leonard Fournette actually laughed off all of the criticism, and he's reported back to Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp at 245 pounds. Now, he's listed at 228 pounds on the team's official roster, but last year he played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers while weighing 235 to 240 pounds. So he is within range of last year's playing weight. We actually had an update from Rick Stroud via the Pat McAfee show in regards to what happened with the weight situation.
He wrote about it 7 weeks ago, and at the time, Leonard Fournette said he was 240-something. I asked the coach if it was closer to 250-something, and he said more.
Another thing that Rick Stroud said on the Pat McAfee show is the fact that this is presumed to be Tom Brady's final season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which should be no surprise to anyone. I mean, if Tom Brady could have had his way if he was a free agent
with the Tampa Bay
this past
Buccaneers,
year,
then he
probably would have signed on with the Miami Dolphins. There's an ownership stake for him there, something that he was interested in and something that he was trying to pull off this past offseason. It didn't end up happening, but he even openly admitted it during a press conference. Although he didn't just straight up tell us, he kind of hinted to the fact that he was doing his best to try to pursue other opportunities outside of Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's what I was
Rick
saying.
Stroud kind of
He might go on another
reaffirms
team,
that
though.
on the Pat McAfee show. Take a look.
I think the thought is this is it in Tampa. He could have signed an extension here. He chose not to. I think he wants to be a free agent the way he was in New England. He didn't have that option this past offseason. So any designs he had on Miami or some other place, is going to have to involve some kind of compensation here.
So look, I don't think this is something that we were very much surprised by. I mean, there was a chance that Tom Brady was going to retire this past year, and he ended up coming back. So that's a huge
made a whole
win for the
retirement
Tampa Bay
video and
Buccaneers
everything.
End of that. And originally, we assumed that Tom Brady was going to play until the age of 45. I think he might try to play one more season because he is going to hit free agency this offseason. We'll have to see how the season season plays out, because I think that's going to be a huge factor to his decision. But I think the biggest news we got today is something that has the potential to sabotage the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' entire season. So Ryan Jensen originally wasn't going to come back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think anyone wanted to originally come back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What changed things was obviously once Tom Brady decided to come out of retirement 40 days after he decided
that Tom Brady effect.
The moment he did that, the day of free agency, you saw a huge influx of re-signees and some potential players that decided to come to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Primarily a lot of individuals that used to be former division rivals of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like Russell Gage and eventually Julio Jones and Kyle Rudolph later on in the offseason. So it's really unfortunate because during the early part of training camp, well, your discretion is advised, especially once you hear Ryan Jensen screaming in this video. Check it out.
What happened? Wait.
So Ryan Jensen's injury is really freaking bad. At the time that I'm recording this video, I don't know what it is, but I mean, my guess would be a torn ACL or something of that sort. So Jenna Laney, ESPN says, it's not looking good for Bucs center Ryan Jensen, who suffered a left knee injury today. They're continuing to perform tests and will know more in the coming days. Robert Hainsey will step in now to fill Ryan Jensen's shoes. They'll look for a veteran
best offensive lineman? The best offensive lineman is
left
hurt.
guard would be Luke Godek or Aaron Stinney. But either way, Tom Brady could very well have 3 new interior linemen. And this is where it's kind of terrifying if you're a Tom Brady fan or if you're just a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Of course, you're going to be getting lit up.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now looking at the possibility of having to replace their entire starting offensive line. Tampa, Ryan Jensen, and Ali Marpet. According to Adam Schefter, the Buccaneers are still doing tests on the injured knee of center Ryan Jensen and hope to know more in the next few days. But one source said this afternoon that, quote unquote, it's not looking good. So that's a word that we've been hearing over and over and over again. Well, a phrase that we've been hearing over and over again, that it's just not looking good in general. The reason why this is such a big freaking deal is a huge portion of Tom Brady's sustained success in the NFL is having an offensive line.
Yes.
Depend upon.
You're gonna be getting lit up now.
Want to just have
any old now. You're gonna be getting lit up.
Greatest player of all time, especially when he's going into his age 45 season. There's some irony in this because Patrick Mahomes had to deal with this exact same situation, except it was
Super Bowl,
in the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Whereas Tom Brady is dealing with this situation during training camp. So there is some options for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to fix this. Probably your best option is to reach out to JC Tretter and see if you could get him to sign on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I would say, in my opinion, that would probably be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' best option. But I'm not exaggerating when I say this is by far the worst thing that could have happened to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers during training camp up until this point. So let me know in the comment section down below.
That is mega tough. I ain't gonna lie to you. Hey man, let me know down in the comments. Do you think he's gonna come back? He's gonna be alright, or you think he's gonna be out for the season, man? Let me know down in the comments. But I hope y'all will enjoy this video. You watch this right now. Appreciate you. See you in the next video, bro. Bye.